All right, this is a subject that I've wanted to cover for some time now, but I keep forgetting about it because I get distracted. So, unless you're my age or slightly less than my age, you will not have heard, or well, probably not have heard about the practices of the so-called government. Um, and what the media uh, did point out, but then obfuscated the very point that they put out this report, this story. And later on, they just did a complete 180, and they started not even to obfuscate what the very things that they put out, which is what we see. You see them say one thing, and then on the same channel. Now it's not like way back where it was. It would happen uh, months, if not years later, that they would start obfuscating what they put out. Basically, meaning that would they would do a counter to the very issues they were bringing up. And now we're seeing it in real time, uh, many times, often in the same friggin' day, if not within minutes to hours after they put out something. They'll do a complete 180 and completely uh, destroy what the very issue they were bringing up. Uh, so all right, so going back in the 80s and early 90s, there was stories that came out about how the U.S. Because they were talking about the farm bill and farmers and how farmers were getting hit and so on and so forth, and how the farmers needed relief and this whole thing. And there were stories of how the government were telling the farmers to destroy their crops, and if they couldn't do that, they would buy the crops. They would pay these sums so that to harvest it, and then what they would do is store it, put it in storage places, and basically they would just lay there and rot away. And so farmers started getting these handouts and so on and so forth. Uh, and I'm not going to get into the more intricate stuff, like how it was really the whole thing was basically so that farmers would have to fail, so that big corporations like Land O'Lakes and other big uh, big companies and corporations could basically take the land and produce, or put pressure to make sure that the farmers would have to lease themselves. And it's not lease, it's basically enslave the farmers. Now, of course, not all farmers, because there were those smaller farmers. It was generally the smaller farmers. The larger landowner farmers, the ones that had huge tracts of land to grow their stuff, they who were who had who were more independently financially well off, they didn't that what there was less pressure on them for these tactics. Now, So as I said, I'm not. There's more than that in intricacies, but basically, these are the sort of things that have been happening, and this happened well before the '80s and the early '90s. This happened back in the days before the country was the United States, before there was a United States. It was, and again, take away the uh, uh, take away the label of corporations and companies and so on and so forth. It basically came down to landowners who had money and financial security. Those are the ones who are acting like a criminal mafia, using all sorts of predatory measures to get more control. And so we're seeing it. We're seeing it more out in the open, and more people are waking up to the fact that this is happening. They may not use the words I'm using, and that's because they've been indoctrinated. They've been brainwashed. They've been trained. We're just a bunch of trained monkeys. And this is from centuries and centuries before, even before the colonization. Well, not call. Let's stop calling it colonized. Let's just call it what it is: an invasion, a very brutal, vicious, genocidal, homicidal, megalomaniacal, no morals, no ethics, no nothing. It was just a free for all of unimaginable, brutal, vicious, killing and murdering, and so on and so forth. That's basically what it was. And let's not get into the semantics, because semantics is bullshit. So but that was happening when they were beating the fuck out of each other out in their own in their own lands, killing each other and brutalizing each other. This is something that has been ingrained, and this is the sort. This is what propaganda means. Is that it's societal manipulation by the few to put this mentality of get mine and fuck all. That's what Western society is. Get mine and fuck all. But that's not just in the West. The Chinese do it. The Indians from India do it. Whether you live in Russia, whether you live in Iceland or Newfoundland or Greenland or wherever, that's the mentality. That's the mentality they've been pushing. And the quicker people come to understand this and start to solidify as a critically thinking and impassioned thinking that that turns to compassion, seeing having compassion as seeing the interconnectivity of if it's hurting me, if it's making me do things that otherwise is unnatural, and it is pushing the unnatural, and it is hurting me, and thereby it's collectively hurting all of us, and it's also collectively hurting the very planet that we need for our basic resources, the one that supplies without saying, oh, well, we're gonna, the planet doesn't dictate and say, oh, I'm going to supply you with this, but you gotta give me this. That's not what the planet does. The planet doesn't have hordes of of uh, oppressionists going around saying, "No, you can't take that. No, you can't have that. You need to give me something before you can." That's not how it works. That's not how nature works. And for the generosity that nature produces, we we get our basic needs. It is it is only humanity who separates itself from nature, who dictates what what costs are. Only, and it is the ones who have pushed the idea of some sort of monetary form, and the thought of ownership of the natural world, that we collectively have accepted that we have what we get, and we have a fuck all in get me mine way of thinking, and this is what control. This is what causes us to think the way we do, feel the way we do, and exist, not live, but exist the way we do. And all of that ultimately is destructive. Now, I've gone far off, far from off the field, because I want to make a point, because Jimmy Dore covered a story where there's a quote unquote reporter from the news media, and they're talking to this farmer out in California, and this guy owns a large tract of land. He's a landowner. He's one of the financially and socially secure people. So they show a video of him destroying his crops, his food crops, and it's not really his. Uh, this guy pays a bunch of migrants and workers to plant and harvest. So basically, all he is basically a landowner who's dictating what's going to happen. But he's destroying all this food crop, and the whole narrative is well, it'll go to waste, and so on and so forth. I can't pay for the people to work to harvest and plant, and it's because of the pandemic and the economic crisis, and so on and so forth. Uh, that is just megalomaniacal, psychotic thinking, and that is because that's what the system breeds: this megalomaniacal, psychotic thinking, rather than that farmer saying, "Well, I can't let it go to waste," and the economy i- is it can't um, it can't it can't help me at this time, and say, okay, so I'm gonna make put out a call, and to the public. I'm gonna go on social media. I'm gonna talk to this reporter and say, look, I got all this food crop. I don't want it to go to waste. I'm putting out a call for to the community and the greater community. Come, help me harvest this, help me distribute this, so that the people that are millions that are standing in at food banks and millions of others who've had to cut their food budget needs, and those who are homeless, and so on and so forth, should get this, so that it will help out in some little way. So none of this thinking went through this megalomaniacal landowner, financially and socially secure, psychotic asshole. That's not None of this went through. It's, oh, destroy it, and so that nobody else can get it, because if I can't get mine, fuck all. That's his thinking. That's his core thinking. And the reporter did none of what I said this farmer should have done. Didn't question it. Regurgitated the narrative that it's the economy. I can't pay for people. So I have to destroy the crops because it's just going to go to waste. When that is just wasteful. Period. This is why I continuously talk about how money and ownership, any sort of I need to have money, or I need to have something for what I do, and the thing is most of that of the production, ownership, and all those are from those who have the ideology, this fuck all ideology, who have this predatory fuck all ideology, this megalomaniacal, psychotic ideology, who use all levers to get where they are and stay where they are, and they'll do anything and everything to stay that way. And the thing is even for them, like Jeff Bezos and all they may the media likes to push how happy and how secure. And the thing is if they were actually to show do a 24-hour video cast of their lives, you would see that they're completely unhinged as well as unhappy, and that it's not when I say 24 hours, I'm talking about unscripted, unedited, unconscious, and basically how they normally feel, the way their views are, how they see things. We would see this fuck all ideology causes them emotional and mental stress, that they're not as happy, they're not as carefree as the media perception, which bleeds into the general public, and the general public picks this up and starts to imbibe it and make it part of them, which is the way a virus like this pandemic does. We internalize, and so this thinking is a virus. And the superiority complex of, oh, my race is more superior, my culture is more superior, my is more superior. That's how this virus acts. And society in general around the world, the way that's the way it has been for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years. Rather than thinking about how to eliminate the stress, how to eliminate the worry, how to encourage thinking and imagination and innovation through thinking, and how to build true solidarity and community. No, what is pushed is this idea of fuck all, take all, kill them all, if necessary. That's what it comes down to. Now, I've done videos where I say, look, if we center work as not in physical labor for some sort of meaningless recompense, which puts us in a metaphorical, invisible chains and bondage, and we start thinking about how to make our own personal lives better, and how that will make the contribute to the personalized well-being of others better, and how that is all interconnected, and so on and so forth, how that will contribute to less stress, less worry, less concern, and we start to get a better handle on our anger and our fears, and so on and so forth. Then we start to move forward. Then we start to reach for living rather than existence. And I've done videos on how we could possibly attain that. If we can, this unreasoned fear that, if we have automation, if we have the mass surveillance, and I can't, and I use this because these words, because it's there are better words, better ways to phrase it, but I use it because this is the way we've come to understand it, because this is what's been pushed. Okay, this is the false narrative, the driving thing that gives us this fear, which is unreasoning. So rather than looking at those things as something to be feared, and we start to look at it as, oh, look, if we have this mass surveillance and everybody has access to it, there are no restrictions, and we can just look at it, and it covers everybody equally, 24/7, 365 days a year. And if something happens, somebody kills somebody, right? Rather than having working from a vacuum where we don't really have a full context behind it, we can say, oh, wait, let's find out what this how this person was feeling and thinking, and what happened before to bring this about. So with this sort of open source, we can go back and look at it and say, oh, okay, so all right, this is what happened. So this person did this because of this X, Y, and Z, and we can say, well, and he has that mentality of fuck all, and so on and so forth, and it's because his parents had that mentality of fuck all, or his community had that mentality of fuck all, and so we can level up a reasonable punishment and start working on the family and the community and the person who actually did it to clear, so that we can clear their thinking, clear their minds, and so on and so forth, and work to get a better understanding of how all of it happened, and we could show them through their own the video and audio and all that other stuff, how it caused this, and we can bring it to how this. So open source stuff like that, that's 365 days a year, it clarifies a lot of things, and it can make criminal justice real justice, because we can tackle the issues that brought about this predatory, megalomaniacal thinking. If we have mass production, and we can make almost everything that we need mass produced in a reasoned, rational, moral, ethical way, which I've talked to, I've thought of intensely, and that's the work I do. That's real work. It's tackling issues, coming up with possible solutions. That I do that a lot in my videos. So if you can mass produce everything, and we don't put ownership into things, and we can provide collectively for ourselves the housing, the heat, the water, the food. We need a smart device so that we can stay in contact with each other, so that we can discuss things, so that we can see. We can do these videos. We can go on and look at documentaries or scientific breakthroughs, or all the other things that we do. We start and we stay motivated. Bo has a channel called Bo of the Fifth Column, and I like Bo, and he recently did a video which gives credence to what I'm talking about, and this idea that if people have nothing to do, they'll be lazy, they'll be predatory, they'll be criminally inclined. He said, I'm starting to question that thinking, and he points out exactly why. Because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and people aren't able to go to work, and so on and so forth. Yet they're being creative, imaginative. They're making masks. They're doing this and doing that, and they're giving it out, and they're not asking anything for it. That's how a true society should work. But what you have through the propaganda, lying media, as well as the politicians, and those who like that asshole farmer is, and these other people who are out there saying open up the economy, but that's a fear-driven less than imaginative, less than solidarity, less than moral, ethical. You know, it's the narrative, it's the position that all these criminals of the upper financial echelon and landowner echelon produced and infected the greater human population with with varying degrees of how much we've internalized. So we got the politicians saying, let's get back to fucking work." You got a mayor in Las Vegas, and she's on CNN with the whitehead guy, who's actually has blood connections to the Vanderbilts. So it's like, and she's talking about hey, go and you can check David Doe. He did a story on that. But basically, she's that megalomaniacal, psychotic thinking, as like she's saying, we'll make let's have us being the test subjects, and we need to get back to it. And she uses, well, people are going hungry, people are and it's all that, and it's the same thing with those protesters. They use they open up the economy. They use this rather than thinking critically, rather than saying, having that thing of the farmer, destroy the crops because it's going to go to waste. But there's an obvious solution. Call on the community. Same with those protesters. They could gather as a community and share their resources to wait it out, help each other out. The obvious solution is say, hey, if you're gonna do this and you're gonna keep sending money to yourselves, you fucking criminal politicians, and you're gonna send it to the people who don't need it, then guess what? We're not gonna pay the taxes. We're not gonna when you send your thugs called the police and sheriff, we're gonna be armed and we're gonna start shooting you. And we're gonna work together as a community and say fuck you. That's the obvious solution. But nope, it's get out there and protest. And the Koch brothers and the Koch family, they're one of the main pushers and funders for that. They're not the only one, but they're one of the ones. So, and rather than that, they're out there with that megalomaniacal, psychotic thinking of fuck all, give me what's mine, and so on and so forth. It all comes down to there are always answers and solutions, and relying on and trying to find leadership when we should be the leaders. We should be the ones calling us on our communities and coming together as a community and being the leaders. Not leader, but leaders. We constantly put out our hands. Arms, please. Please. What the fuck? How is that fucking being grown up? How is that fucking sane? How is that fucking anything but utter, unambiguous stupidity? There are always answers. Always. But that requires us to think. That requires us to come together. That requires us to understand that money and economy is a fabrication, is a way for others who are more criminally and predatorily inclined, who are more psychotic, who are more insane to do what they do. We've seen it in real time. We have to come to understand. And one last thing. I made a video on this before, and I'm still trying to figure out and get community together to do this. And I want to start something, and I've cemented the title and label for it, but it's called the Gaia Order. And basically, what it will be is a non-profit slash, I guess, because of the way these crazy, insane rules that are made to make sure that you can't come together as a community. You can't do things that will possibly bring to light issues and solutions, and also a way to control, because religions, all religious places. I don't care how progressive they sound. I don't care how sane they sound. It's a way to keep the control. It's a way to muddy and muddle people's thinking, and so the Gaia Order is basically a cross between a non-profit and a religious thing. I forget exactly what it's called, but it's and the fact that you have to register, and you have to pay for this sort of thing goes to show you how criminally predatory, corrupt the way it is. So basically, the Gaia Order is there'll be kind of you'll come in, and it'll be kind of like you coming into a church. You get a sermon, but except it's talking about the issues that I talk about, pointing out the solutions, talking about how you know if you're in a crisis system, you don't go destroy the food crop. You talk about how you talk about how to harvest the food crop, and how to build up a network to spread it around. You also you come in, you have an interest in, let's say, computer programming. Yeah, it'd be like a learning workshop as well, and people, it doesn't cost anything. The will not only that, but will produce food and other stuff, as well as how to grow, how to eat nutritiously, why eating nutritiously, balanced nutrition actually helps to keep down our obesity, keep our health up, keep ourselves healthy, and help to fight the germs and viruses. Keeps our immune system, all sorts of other things, and it's also about building a community, and basically, you go to a church, you donate money, but the whole process is not about getting money. It's about building a community. It's about helping to get people more informed, showing, attracting them to interests and aspirations that are community building, that are geared to make our use our the natural resources from nature, which is given freely in a responsible way that leaves our natural world better. It's about building. It's about people rather than people that really show an interest. They are brought into the community, and the community works together collectively, and you not only are at this sort of place, but you actually live kind of like the Amish, except without the Amish and Mennonite rules of women. The women have to dress this way, and the and and you know women have to dress this way, and you can't listen to music, you can't use technology, you can't do. So we we have something like that. If something happens, like in the Amish community, something out of the control in a like a farm, like the barn house goes down, or a house goes down. The Amish community comes together and builds it up together. They pool their resources and skills. That's what the Gaia order is, but it's not based on a religion. It's based on community. So I'm still trying to work on establishing this, and but and I'm going to find a way to get, whether through Patreon or whatnot, to or something to so that people who want to donate and start this can donate, uh, and I'll I'll be opening up a channel and finding either I'll do it or find somebody else that will has critical thinking like me to do further videos. I think I'm a little too rough and impassioned to get the message out, which is probably why I don't have a lot of subscribers and a lot of viewers. But that's me trying to think critically. But I also think that it is necessary to be impassioned, vocal, and show anger, and not hold myself back from how I feel and how I think. So, all right, that's it. Thank you.